Right. We are here today with Heather Amos. I'm starting to lose count of how many of these we've done. But I've been thinking now, we've really been at them for the guts of about 3 months, almost since the start of the lockdown. And lots of very interesting interviews with lots of interesting people doing lots of interesting things. And obviously some businesses that have been going a little bit longer. Heather is one of those folk, all types of businesses, not just within hospitality, who originally fell between the cracks in terms of getting any government support. Now, Heather's been in one of the little cafe and coffee shop owners group that I have on Facebook, and she built a business and got it started about 7 months, a little bit over 7 months before lockdown. And I had been observing it, as had another client of mine, and we've had some communication with Heather as well, just in terms of how really exceptionally nailed her social media was. So she built a good, profitable business within that short period of time. I can tell from the pictures that there was a fair bit of money spent. So one of the original, whenever this whole thing blew up, Heather put a comment up in the cafe and coffee shop owners group about how really, she was falling between the cracks. Wasn't getting financial support, and actually couldn't see how she was going to survive. And it was slightly brutal to observe. I mean, she wasn't the only person coming up with stuff like that, but I can remember looking at it and thinking, you've done such a good job. It would be horrendous to lose all of that. And then very quickly, Heather did this, this pivot thing, because obviously she'd fallen between the cracks. Like a lot of people, they had no option but to try and get open. So Heather got open and tweaked and adjusted the menu a little bit. And it is fair to say that is now doing very well. So welcome, Heather.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about it from your perspective at the beginning.
I think that week before lockdown, when everybody's sort of going into panic and you think, oh, we'll be fine. And we started to, I went out and spent an absolute fortune on disposable takeaway packaging.
Yes.
On the Friday, I think, and on the Saturday, we made the decision to close. And I was like, oh my God, the coffee shop was full of takeaway packaging. And I thought, oh my days, I've just completely wasted all this money. I'm gonna have to sell it on. And it was pure panic, really. I think I'd made a bit of there was some sort of error in terms of my registration of the business with the council. So at the time, I thought I wasn't going to get the grant. Because I've been open less than a year as a self-employed sole trader, then I won't get any wage effectively.
Yep.
So to say there was probably a week of sheer panic. On the phone to my dad, on the phone to my sister, on the phone to a friend Gemma who I've met through this group, and just real panic really. So I took probably a couple of weeks to say, right, what am I going to do? And I did a few things that I've been talking about doing for quite a while.
Yes.
While we were open, but just being a new business, just hadn't had the time to take the time to do it. So I set up a website.
Yeah.
So I started selling retail coffee. I started selling lots of other random things. I'd always wanted a coffee shop and a gift shop, but the place wasn't big enough, so it was never an option. But the website was an absolute godsend for me because it started bringing money in when I knew actually we weren't legally allowed to open anyway. So that was great. I also applied for a license, which we've been talking about doing since day one.
Yeah.
So that's got going now, and we've had that approved and granted. And then I was saying to you earlier, I don't really know what the point was where I said, you know what, we need to open and we need to crack on. I don't know when it was. I know that one of my staff was desperate to get back.
Yes.
He said, come on, let's just do it. Let's give it a go. And sort of looking around, taking inspiration from what other people were doing, really. Seeing lots of afternoon teas. And then saw this company about 30 miles away who were doing grazing boxes, who were doing amazingly well, and they've been an incredible support, and just thought, let's try it. Let's see what happens. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but we need to give it a go. And actually, I think we're in our sixth or seventh week of doing the takeaway boxes, and it's unbelievable the volume that we're doing. I thought it would die off. We knew VE Day would be busy. VE Day was absolutely insane. And I thought gradually it would die off, even with the weather being bad, but it just hasn't at all, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. So you started very minimal, didn't you? It was just It was just a couple of grazing boxes to begin with, wasn't it?
I think it might have even just been the afternoon teas, I think.
Right, okay.
And then we introduced...
You had been doing afternoon teas before, hadn't you?
Yeah, and I think we're quite a small town in Leeds.
Yes.
There's not a huge amount here, actually. There's another diner coffee shop, but she's very different positioning to me. There's the Morrison's Caffè, which I don't class as competition, but
Sure.
but there isn't a huge amount of competition, really. And we kind of made afternoon tea our thing. I used to, every time I posted something on social media with a picture of our afternoon tea, we used to get just a huge amount of bookings, and it was incredible, the reaction to it. It was brilliant. So because we'd become famous for that, it felt like that was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It's affordable, people just wanted a treat, and so yeah, it was the right positioning for us, really, to start with.
Yeah, I mean, I think the afternoon tea piece is interesting because obviously you are, what I would term speciality, and there aren't that many folk who are doing that kind of afternoon tea thing within the speciality. But there's actually a really big demand for it.
Yeah, and one thing that's really astounded me is how Betty down the road and Joanne up the street, they're all doing it, and they're not food hygiene rated. And
yes, I know.
There are afternoon teas coming out of our ears, but actually we don't seem to have lost any volume because of that. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the case. I think some people are being hit very hard with that. There are an enormous amount of people probably out on furlough just thinking, well, how can I make a little bit of extra money? Or indeed, I'm not judging that, or even actually not on furlough and just thinking I've got to make some money.
Yeah.
And it's, it's hard to blame them, but when you have a business overhead like you and everybody else has, it's a little tough. And I know it has hit a lot of people. Now, what I would say with that is you clearly do a very good offer. So I think those folk that are managing to do that can withstand those sort of kitchen bakers, those home bakers that are out there at the moment. I wanted to talk obviously a little bit about the social media piece because, for example, I have used, there was a social media post that you did, I'm not sure, maybe 6 months or so ago. And it was an extremely good use of, there's kind of these 5 posts that I teach, these 5 posts you need to rotate around in terms of getting engagement and then the ability to sell. And one of them is the asking of a personal question, because you then get the engagement. And you did a very clever thing where you asked a contentious personal question about black puddings. I mean, in our world, it's not that contentious, let's be honest. But it was just that it's a love-hate thing, and therefore it was a really good way to get lots of engagement. And you got so many comments. Yeah. I think the great thing about that kind of post that people don't understand is the comments are almost irrelevant. It's the fact that you're getting them. You probably were going to make the decision to do it or not, but people arguing in there, then what happens is Facebook love that, Instagram love that, and then you work the algorithm and you get this you then get your posts consistently put in front of those people afterwards. Yeah. Did you come from what were you doing before this?
So I worked in the food industry,
right?
For just over 20 years. Same company for 17 years and another company for 3 years,
right?
Doing sales and marketing. So commercial roles, really.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I kind of assumed you might have had some marketing background because it was, very well put together. Although some people are, of course, a little bit instinctive actually in terms of social media, but it was very well put together. Now, the other question that we had, or that I would sort of put to you as well, is that I know the answer to this, but do you think you could have got open again and got as busy and as profitable as you are without having reworked that social media?
No. Yeah. I think for me, that's what allowed people to know what we were doing, and it allowed people to understand that we were doing afternoon teas. And as I was saying to you earlier, I think we've gained I think we've got just over about 3,300 followers at the moment.
Right.
And 1,000 of those have come during, I could say around 1,000 of those have come during lockdown.
Yeah, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons is people have got more time on their hands, but people have been coming to us, and the amount of new customers we've gained. I think week 1, when we started doing the afternoon teas, my colleague and I were in here making up all the boxes, and people coming in to collect. And I said to Emily, who I work with, I don't recognise a single one of the people that have come in today to pick up boxes. Right. And I thought that we would get lots of regulars coming in, and we do now. But
a general support thing from your customers, yeah.
It was unbelievable. So that's been huge for us, no question. And I don't post every day, I post, sometimes I post 3 times a day, depending on what we've got to say, and sometimes I might not post for 3 days, but we do generally get quite good engagement on a lot of our posts. So
yes, no, I know I've seen. So obviously, like a lot of other folk, and you don't need to give me the figures, but I think you're as busy as you're as busy as you were projecting to be. Isn't that correct? Or are you busier?
So I think we are as busy in 3 days with 2 staff as we were 6 days with 5 staff, which is just insane. And don't get me wrong, the cost of goods are probably up with the stuff that we're purchasing. You know, we're spending a huge amount on cake. I've never sold so much cake.
Right.
Never sold as much cake and coffee as we did on Saturday.
You're buying in?
Yeah, so we freshly make our scones. Our kitchen is approximately the size of a postage stamp, and I'm not exaggerating. Right. It's absolutely tiny. And we just don't have the space. But we use local bakers. So we use one, unfortunately, have closed, and they won't be reopening. But our main
reopening, did you say?
No, it's not due to coronavirus. It was a decision they'd kind of made beforehand, but this is sort of made the final decision for them, really. But yes, they're about 5 miles away on the other side of Leeds, and the cakes are fantastic. They're homemade. They're made by one lady, and we're really proud of them, and the customers absolutely love them. So for me, that works really well. But yeah, Saturday was what we would class as a busy Saturday. Just doing coffee and cake, and that's not including the boxes that we did. So, I mean, it's just mental. But we're quite small, so we're always limited in terms of what we can sell. We're quite limited because once we're full, we're full. So we do get some takeaway, but minimal.
Right. So how many covers have you got?
If you include, so downstairs we've got 12, upstairs we've got about 15, and then outside when we're full, there's probably another 15, 16.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I think the interesting point is, and again, we were discussing earlier, there's a debate going on in the group. I'm about to do a piece of training in terms of how to financially manage or help people to financially manage through into the next phase. But obviously, if you look at your figures, you know, it's busy in 3 days with 2 staff versus 6 days and 5 staff, you know, that's vastly more profitable, even if you are taking a small margin hit. But I think this next transition is going to be interesting, particularly for folk like you who are small and don't have that ability then to allow people to socially distance easily. What are you going to, how do you feel you're going to manage that phase? What are you going to keep on? And how are you going to, you know, as it were, move back into some sense of normal?
I get asked daily by lots of people, when can we come back in? When can we sit? And I think it's going to be a long time for us. I really do. We don't actually let customers into the shop. Right. So we have a table, so we have some steps that come into the shop, and we put a table there, and that's where we serve customers from. So we don't need stickers and screens and all that. So it's actually working from a cost perspective. I haven't had to spend hundreds of pounds getting screens and everything else. It works really well, and it's all contactless payments, no cash. Now, we do have the outside, but unfortunately you have to walk through the shop, through the serving area to get to the outside. So again, that's not an option for us.
Yes.
So I guess, and I would be lying if I said I had a plan. I haven't. I'm literally taking each week as it comes. And each week we'll say, well, why don't we try this? And people keep coming and saying, oh, why aren't you doing bacon sandwiches? Why aren't you doing your salads? We can't do all that as well as doing the afternoon teas and the grazing boxes. Hence the reason we're just doing coffee and cake. So what I'm thinking of doing at the moment is potentially setting up home as food safe, doing the afternoon teas and the grazing boxes, continuing those out of home, and then starting to bring back some of the regular menu so that people can come and pick up the butter bowls that they love, the bacon sandwiches, whatever that might be. So that's kind of where my thinking is at the moment. I don't want to lose. I think we will forever do takeaway afternoon teas now. I think that will be part of our product range, and I think the grazing boxes, as I mentioned earlier with the license, it was always the long-term plan to get an alcohol license and start opening 2 or 3 nights a week. There's not a huge amount around here, and I know a lot of the other local businesses, when we open, are like, come on, get a license, make this more of a destination for a night out. And I do genuinely think it'll work. It's got a really different vibe to the other bars around here.
Right.
So the plan was always to do meat and cheese grazing boxes. So lockdown has given us the opportunity to become a little bit famous for those, and hopefully when we do reopen, it'll bring people in to say, oh, actually, I had one of those during lockdown, I'll get one tonight or whatever that might be. So yeah.
I mean, I have well, he's a very good friend now. He was a client many years ago, and he is doing a not dissimilar thing in a kind of cafe restaurant back in Northern Ireland. And I mean, his words, and he's been going a long time, and his mother had it before him, so they are proper industry veterans. And he's saying that he said, this is going nowhere, this thing now. There's no doubt in his mind that people will continue to come in. Now, what he's doing is basically part cooked versions of what they normally have on, but it now becomes then a version of it, but now becomes an option for people to have rather than just having a fish and chips or Chinese takeaway or an Indian takeaway or the pizza or any of those things. I think there's going to be a fundamental shift in terms of people's behavior, and those restaurants and cafes that continue to move that on. It's like the whole rest of the world has stolen our trade in terms of the coffee thing, if you know what I mean. Everybody wanted to take that piece, and I think there's going to be a reshifting out of that in terms of our industry being able to take back some of what the bars and the restaurants have been doing in the normal takeaways, which is probably a good shift for us. So you would be, in terms of your evening menu, was that going to be probably based around a kind of a grazing box type of thing or sharing platter kind of thing anyway, or?
That was always the plan, and then with a sort of ad hoc pop-up restaurant, bringing in different chefs. Our chefs very passionate about food as well.
Yes, so you're A3, aren't you?
Yeah. So bringing in some pop-up street foodie type things. We've pretty much got we've got 2 pizza places, restaurants. We've got curry. And then one of the pizza restaurants does pasta and a few other bits. But that's kind of about it. So I think, getting some vegan nights going, getting some noodle nights, I think people are already really excited. And I've been saying it since day one, and people are already getting, really excited about it. And I think, for me, they're not going to be huge money earners, I don't think, necessarily, because I think a lot of the chefs you bring in want, pretty decent margins. But for me, it's about bringing people in, bringing new people in, and just adding a bit of excitement to the high street. And,
absolutely. Something to talk about, something to put out on social media, but also, if you have 4 people that come in, 2 of them may never have known that you were there. So and one of them might become a regular customer. And I think that's the big advantage of that, of doing that. But it is just buzz, and particularly, I think it also works very strongly in terms of then being part of the community. I think there are layers of benefits over the actual financial benefit, but you would certainly hope that there would be some level of profit within that. But no, I mean, of course, there is time that has to go into them. What do you feel like? So you've obviously learned a lot through this whole process. You've learned to a large extent. Clearly you've proven how valuable the social media piece is. But what do you think you will change? I mean, are there any items in the menu that you think you will get rid of as you move forward? Have you tightened up a lot of operational systems? I mean, you probably have to an extent if it's just the 2 of you in there.
Yeah, we've had to, really. I think menu-wise, frustratingly, I printed new menus about a week before lockdown. And I think it's going to be a long time there on a clipboard that people have on the tables. And it's going to be a long time before we're using those, which is a bit frustrating, but that's fine. But what I'd kind of said when we first opened was that we would have quite a basic menu. And then we really use our specials board to the maximum, really. Again, to create excitement and engagement. And we've added some specials that have been incredibly good for us. They're now on the main menu. There was very little that we took off, actually. And so we've just, again, kept it simple with the plan to just create excitement through, this is what we're doing this week. And, there's not a lot of vegan options around here. And that's one thing that we've focused on. So we've got a lot of new customers through that. And a lot of sort of influential vegans around Leeds and York who are sharing a lot of our posts and stuff, which is great. So menu-wise, I think we'll probably stick with kind of where we were to start with, really, not make any huge changes. But I really feel, my biggest nervousness is over the next sort of 6 months is when we can open. And, we're finding takeaway while the weather's lovely. But we saw on Friday, we had torrential rain here and we saw a real drop in customers. And that's a massive impact for us. So that's my biggest worry is when we start to get to sort of October, November, and people don't want to be walking the streets and going for their, daily exercise every day in the rain. What's the impact going to be of that? So I need to start thinking about what the next the next big thing is, I guess, the next afternoon tea, the next grazing box.
Sure.
We're looking at potentially doing alcohol now as takeaway, and adding that and saying, you know, get an afternoon tea with a bottle of fizz or a bottle of wine with your grazing box. That's something I'm looking at this week. The breakfast box we introduced late on, probably maybe about 3 weeks ago, and that's been really good, really, really good. So easy to put together. And again, it's just a treat. People have been buying them as gifts, and, you know, meetups with friends. And so, yeah, I need to get in my head what's the next big thing, really.
Yeah, I mean, because in these, we always do these kind of predictions in terms of the future. And I think it's always sort of, you know, just stick your finger in your mouth, stick it in the air, you know. But how do you believe customer behavior is going to change? You know, what you obviously, I think one of the advantages of talking to folk like you who are opening is that you are seeing a lot of that in real time. How do you feel? Obviously, we're likely to move into, obviously, you know, recession, depression. So value is going to be important. But, you know, and I think fine dining, certainly somewhere like where you are, or, you know, as I say, when I say you, I mean, basically anybody other than the city in London, fine dining is going to have a really tough time. But how do you feel any other form of behavior will change? Do you think people are going, you know, there's some of the predictions in terms of, you know, people learning how to brew coffee much better at home, which I have to say I'm not that worried about, because I think it's a very different thing, you know.
Yeah.
What's your view in terms of or your thoughts in terms of the changes that there may be?
I think for me, I've seen it already just in behaviours of people coming into the shop, and the things that people are saying is there's a huge support for independence.
Yes.
And, you know, we've seen that locally, things like farm shops who are just, their sales have absolutely gone through the roof, and people are continuing to do that, even though it's easier to get into the supermarkets now. You know, as I said, I set my website up and people are coming to me and saying, oh, well, actually, I would normally go to Amazon, but actually I'm going to buy a candle off you, and I'm going to buy a few cards, and I'm going to buy this. And, you know, people are coming here to buy a cappuccino and at the same time spending £20 on a candle and buying, you know, one of our reusable cups, a little bit of branding there.
Yes. Your branding's great. Your branding's lovely. You know, I genuinely mean that, you know.
Thank you. I think there's a huge support. People don't want to lose the high street. And I know people always say that, and they share things on Facebook and support your local, but then in reality they go to Asda or wherever else. But I think there's a real shift.
Oh, there definitely has been.
Yeah, definitely. And real sort of mindset of, and just realising how special they are. You know, coming here for a coffee actually is so much more comfortable and a much nicer experience than going to the Caffè at Morrison's and, you know, having a not very nice coffee. And I just think people will, I really do genuinely believe that people will come out in full force and support the indies.
I think I believe that. I mean, we have a really good friend who runs a big market research company, and I was talking to her on Friday, and she's just finalizing a big piece of research on consumer behavior, 25 and over, which is interesting because basically they very, very rarely do research at 25 and under because you never get the truth. Anyway, that's an aside. But it's about this behavior, and it's a really strongly piece about the local stuff. And it's overwhelming evidence. He's going to give me the results quite soon, which I'll obviously get out there. But it's overwhelming evidence that people will want to support local afterwards. And I think we all know, we keep sort of banding around this term in terms of, you know, memories are short. And I think that is true. And I think if you look at, you know, the enormous queues for McDonald's or an IKEA or whatever, you know, we know that there's certainly some very big brands that people are desperate to get back to. You know, the example that I always use is particularly younger generation desperate to get back to a Nando's or a Wagamama's or whatever. But I think beyond that, I do think those local independents who have kept going, I think there's a real deep understanding of the importance of those within a community.
Yeah, I think one of the other things for me is that it's going to be a long time before a lot of people feel comfortable about going on holiday and, you know, spending money on flights and that kind of thing. Yes. So food really is one of the biggest treats and the only treats and drink that people can get. And so just the simple act of coming down and getting a coffee and a slice of cake is a massive treat for people. And it's something they have, especially when they're working from home. So many of our customers work from home now, and they're coming in and they're just, oh, I need to get away for half an hour and, you know, just wanted to come and get a proper coffee. And so, yeah, I think.
Well, again, that's interesting because I was going to ask you that question. So, you know, obviously every shop is different. Everybody's got a different offer. Everybody's got a different type of customers, and we know that. I have a client right in the city of London, and there's just nobody there at all, you know, and they're going to open again, and then because it's all banks, lawyers, and management consultants, they're all gone in August anyway.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of those folk that are, you know, beside offices are really, really, you know, that is their main, you know, or beside a large business or industrial parks or all sorts of areas like that are going to struggle. There's no doubt. And then I think a lot of the more neighborhood ones will potentially do very well. So are you saying that a lot of maybe some of the sales that you're getting at the moment is from people working from home who would be normally in an office elsewhere?
Yeah, I would say so. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So obviously
a lot of our regular sort of mid-morning, midweek customers are a bit older and retired, and sort of historical really came from the old place.
Yes.
And I love them, I adore them, and they are part of, you know, they're part of the furniture literally. And a lot of them I visited while we've been closed, and you know, because they're not coming out at the moment, a lot of them are shielding. So I've taken afternoon teas round, and I don't underestimate the value of those customers just purely from just an atmosphere. They're just wonderful, and they're you know, I adore them all. But definitely there are a lot of people who are home working or homeschooling, and they're bringing the kids down for milkshakes, that kind of thing. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. And I know, obviously, having been in corporate world, a lot of the companies that I've worked for said they're going to be home working for a long time.
Yeah.
And even when they do go back to the office, it'll be 30% of the staff.
Yeah.
And so the whole world of working is just totally different now. You know, I remember it was really sort of frowned upon when I say, oh, you know, I need to work from home today, I've got the boiler fixed or whatever that might be. It's not like that anymore. People are understanding that Zoom works. You know, you can have business meetings and customer meetings online, and I think there's going to be a massive shift. So that's great for us, because I think
I completely agree. I completely agree. And you know, as I say, I've talked to all sorts of people at all sorts of different locations, but there's no doubt that I think that the neighborhood. I mean, I've been preaching about this growth of neighborhood coffee shops as the main thing for, you know, probably the guts of a decade now, to be honest. And I think that's only going to increase off the back of this, because those people, you know, maybe if they're only working, maybe, you know, it'll take them a while to get back to work. Maybe they might even only ever go back 3 days out of 5, because the big corporates, as you would know, a lot of those folk have had to put in, you know, an infrastructure, you know, a communications infrastructure to allow those people to work. And that's, you know, that is, you know, lawyers, all sorts of different folk that you wouldn't necessarily imagine. Now, those people, of course, then if they're sitting at home, they very quickly realize that working from home is actually not a lot of fun. It's really boring. It's not this wonderful thing, you know. There's some benefits to it, but actually you do want to get out to your neighborhood coffee shop in some form, and that's the affordable luxury piece that we should all benefit from, because if it's just a sort of a £3 latte, as it were, it's very different from necessarily going out and having a full lunch. Now, of course, obviously from your perspective and all other operators, you want more than the £3 latte, but you take what you get.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think also, you know, then the other key piece out of that is you will have, you know, if value is tight, people will always want to still go out and do some form of hospitality. But if they can come out and eat in a cafe or a coffee shop that's doing an evening, that's almost certain to be cheaper than going to a restaurant or a mid-market restaurant.
Yeah.
No, I think everything that you're saying makes a lot of sense. You know, time will tell exactly how that pans out. But I would suggest, yes, you've got quite a long period of time still at this. You know, I mean, you know, there's a lot of people reopening at the moment, but I think because your offer is so solid and strong, you know, you will continue to, you know, to keep those folk. One final thing then, and I know you are probably going to be very humble about this, but you know, because you've only been in the industry for sort of 7 months plus, sort of two entirely distinct periods of time. Really. Although I noticed you've just done the year. Did I see the other day that you were just coming up to the year, or you had the keys a year ago? Is that right?
Yeah. So I got the keys on the 7th of June. Last year. So our first birthday is the 23rd of July.
Right. Okay.
Which I'm a bit gutted about because I wanted to do a big all singing, all dancing party, and so I need to have a think about how I'm going to manage that. Really,
Yeah.
I don't want to miss it.
So what would you suggest, having said all that, I mean, what advice would you give folk out there who have yet to open or are thinking about opening, or, you know, what do you think is, I don't put words in your mouth as I say, but what do you feel is, what advice would you give?
I think for me, just give things a go. And I think, you know, everything I've done, you know, the website as well has been a godsend for us.
Yes.
I'm selling all sorts of random stuff on it, but we sell quite a lot of retail coffee. But I think for me, it was just give it a go, and if it works, expand and just keep going at it. For example, I bought some candles from a local Yorkshire candle maker, and I think I'd sold most of them within 5 days. Wow. So I'm having to get more stock. It's insane, but just give things a go because people want to support. People have still got birthdays, they've still got celebrations, they've still got presents to buy, and they're not going out to get those, so they're willing to support independence. So I think, you know, I didn't know afternoon teas would work as well as they have. Yeah. Very nervous about the Graze boxes. The breakfast boxes, like, give it a go. If it doesn't work, we'll stop it. But everything that we've tried seems to have picked up some momentum and really sort of continued to work. So, as I said earlier, it's just what's the next thing, really. I am concerned that novelty might wear off.
I think you're right.
Yeah, but
I think the flexibility that you are so good at, you know, is really the key point, you know.
Yeah. We've got Father's Day this Sunday, and we've sold over 100 boxes. We are going to have an incredibly busy Sunday making scones and, you know, making boxes up.
And that's predominantly the cream teas, or have you done something specific for Father's Day? I mean, sort of.
So we've done a Father's Day afternoon tea, so it's more savoury focused, I guess. So we're doing cheese scones instead of the fruit scones with frosted cream, and, you know, with cheese and chutney, and it's more, it's probably more my cup of tea, even though I'm not a father, but I love the savoury stuff. So
yes.
So yeah, we've got over 100 orders for that, and we've carried on with the regular afternoon teas and the kids' afternoon teas, so that, you know, people can add to those. So yeah, it's going to be a busy Sunday, but again, it's just another day that we've added in that's just brought a whole huge amount of revenue in for us. It's fantastic.
Yeah, what was it? One other thing I was going to say, what was I going to say there? So I was writing my notes at the same time. Yeah, no, I think it was just to do with that. Yes, I know what it was. Price increases. Did I see you mention that you have put up your normal prices through the process?
Yeah, so I'd always planned, my original plan was to make menu changes and price increases in January, but we just never got around to it. To do with, well, I've had to VAT register now, which is, I'm gutted about, but anyway, it's the way of the world. It's that bittersweet, you know, you've done really well, so you've got to VAT register, but also now you're going to lose that. So the license coming in is hopefully will help boost turnover and revenue anyway. But yeah, we had obviously minimum wage increases and that kind of thing, so we thought actually this is the right time to do it. And to be honest, at the moment we've got I'm just looking up here, but we've got our hot drinks up here, and they've still got the old pricing off because they've used a chalk pen and I can't get the blooming thing off. But no one has looked at a price, questioned a price at all since they've come in. I don't think there's a single person, and we charge more for takeaway as well, which the price for that isn't up there. So we use compostable cups, which are pretty expensive. So we charge 10p when you have a takeaway in a disposable cup. We've not had any challenge whatsoever. So I'm quite pleased that we've I've not done it under the radar because I've not tried. In fact, I think I mentioned it on a post actually that we were putting price increases through, and it's all gone really well.
I think that's a really important point, because it's something that I've been trying to emphasize to people, because I think a lot of people that are in the process of opening are very wary about pricing, and some of them are talking about reducing prices. And of course I'm saying no, because if somebody, you know, if you've built the business up with a solid product, you know, people will want to come out and support you. So certainly no price reductions, I think. And I think you're absolutely right. You're not the only person to have put prices up during this process, because that was that logical time when it was happening anyway. And I think it sometimes requires a little bit of bravery. But what's very interesting is, yes, that you're not even getting any challenge, and actually they're paying a different price from what they're saying.
Yeah, it's mental. You know, people are looking at the sign and they're going, yeah, I'll have a latte. And then I'm putting not only an increased price from that, but also then another 10p in the disposable. So I need to sort that out. That's reminded me. But But yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that you kind of got to remember is there was a lot of people on furlough who have nowhere to spend their money.
That's exactly right.
And, you know, I spoke to a friend yesterday and she said she saved a phenomenal amount of money during lockdown because she's not been spending any money on anything.
Mm-hmm.
They've had the money back for their holiday, and actually financially she's in a really good position.
Yes.
So she wants to go out and support, you know, local businesses where she can, and keep those businesses who may be struggling a little bit, you know, keep them afloat. So
yes, no, there've been some really, really good stories additionally as well for those folk who haven't really been able to get open, you know, who've been able to sell a lot in terms of, you know, vouchers or sort of crowdfunding version. I think there is a huge amount of support out there. Now, of course, we don't quite know then what will happen. You know, I think one of the issues is this post-furlough piece, and it's, well, post-furlough for an operator like you, well, hopefully you'll be fine in terms of then getting those folk back on, but obviously this stage is coming up soon where you're going to have to start to contribute. So I think within the industry, that's when we're going to see the redundancies. We don't know how many, but the same thing is going to happen in other industries. So a lot of those folk who maybe are being, you know, who are being a little bit more generous at the moment, some of those will potentially lose their jobs. We just don't know from that fallout piece. But look, the same rules always apply. Stay flexible, you know, keep doing whatever you can, as well as you can. Hospitality, you know, all of that stuff will continue to be there. But, you know, you've fundamentally grasped that.
Yeah, it's been a good couple of months, I have to say, despite the head in the hands moment at the end of March.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you very much for your time. I know you've got work to do, not just changing the menu. Yeah, look, it's been great to watch, and I'm delighted that obviously it's worked out so well for you. And that, you know, that there's you know, that you have that extra revenue, that extra profitability now, maybe to weather any storm in the future. But look, thanks very much for your time, and I will.
Thank you very much. Thanks, John. Cheers.